let's do the Vanguard, not the Vanguard, but the Marianne Williamson story. She's on the Vanguard. So there is some question she answers that is we would want to examine. She talks about some of the difference between her and RFK, which I think is interesting. And so I'll just, pick out points. We're not going to listen to all of this. I'll move to the points and then get we'll get both of our reaction to some of what she says. Now, this is not a segment on the Vanguard. Literally, they're just asking questions. I wouldn't necessarily say they say anything that's crazy here. It's just the answers that Marianne Williamson has and what she speaks about. I think is interesting for the discourse and her candidacy and for us to kind of talk about. So let's listen to some of what they talk about here and when they get into RFK.
Our democracy from the outside, but neoliberalism is eroding it from the inside. Neo-fascism is a disease. Neoliberalism is weakening our immune system because it's putting so many people in constant and chronic economic stress. 70% of them.
Okay. I didn't mean to rewind it here, but you got to hear this part. Now that I'm remembering what she says here, you got to hear this. You probably hearing it like, what the hell is she talking about? You got to hear the full answer that she gives here. It's pretty bad. Let's hear it.
It's overwhelming our democracy. So the fact they don't want to have debates is just part of it. It's just part of their technique. Keep away anybody who's going to challenge neoliberalism. Now, what they then say is, oh, don't you understand? There are fascists at the door. No, it's because we do understand. At least I can only speak for myself, because I do understand the fascists at the door. Neo-fascism is attacking our democracy from the outside, but neoliberalism is eroding.
Oh my God! So we actually gonna you're gonna
have. I knew you wanted to hear that. That's why I was like, no, you got to hear this explanation.
You're gonna have Marianne Williamson on to have her listen to her bastardizing terms and have her talk about shit she had no idea what the fuck she's talking about. Joe Biden is a fascist. The Democrats are a fascist. You creating all these ridiculous terms trying to make the Republicans seem uniquely different than the Democratic Party, who support the Patriot Act as well, who support ending habeas corpus as well. That's Barack Obama. The Democrats are fascists. You creating these other terms is just as goofy to me as when I hear Jackson Hinkle and people say stuff like globalist. You guys are making up shit because you guys are afraid to call out the true enemy, the capitalist class. Stop making up a bunch of bullshit terms and call out the real enemy. That's what she's doing. I see through it. Stop. She's trying to confuse, and obviously Vanguard, they're dumb as fuck. They don't read. They haven't read an inch of Marx their entire goddamn life. They don't know what the fuck fascist means. They don't know what socialism means. I had a debate with Destiny where they invited me on, and they were praising me. They loved me back then because I took Destiny to school because he knew what fascism meant, and I suppose Destiny, one of the top thinkers of Twitch, I easily took to school because people don't fucking read. Marianne sounds like a moron to me right now, and you guys probably think she sounds impressive because you guys don't know what a fascist is. You guys don't know what socialism is. You guys don't know anything about what it means to be on the left. You guys follow Cal and Crystal and think that's the height of leftism. You think Cal Kalinske is Malcolm X? Go ahead, Cal. Go ahead, CJ. We can continue.
And I didn't know this about Crystal Ball, but she was sort of a Hillary Clinton sort of Democrat when she was running as far as her policy beliefs. She wasn't no lefty like she is now. And I didn't know that until I, read some more about her, which is interesting that a lot of the people who are at the forefronts are these used to be's where they weren't they used to be a Republican. They used to be a liberal, you get what I'm saying? But it seems like they still are. And they're just trying to project that they're more left or more radical. But let's listen to some more explanation of neoliberalism and neo-fascism.
Neo-fascism is a disease. Neoliberalism is weakening our immune system because it's putting so many people in constant and chronic economic stress. 70% of Americans say that they live with constant economic financial stress.
So I'm going to vote for
Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So people are just kind of withering. And, Franklin Roosevelt said we wouldn't have to worry about a fascist takeover if democracy delivered on its promises. So they're not having debates. It's just we need to see this as part of their technique. Their whole thing is keep anybody out of the conversation who in any way wants to challenge the neoliberal status quo. That's what's going on here. It's not about me. It's not about Bobby. It's about our democracy. And that's why it matters. And that's why I hope that anybody with any kind of a progressive, anybody with any kind of a progressive sentiment who thinks, well, we'll go with Joe.
Yeah, it's pretty baffling to me too. And just a quick follow up on the topic of you're one of the other candidates running, I guess one of your fellow opponents in the race, Bobby Kennedy. Obviously he's taken a very strong line throughout his career on the topic of vaccines. It's kind of made him a political outlier, and as a result of that, you've really seen an interesting response. I think a lot of people really enjoy that about him. I think a lot, alarmingly perhaps, but I think it's kind of true. And I also feel like there's been a willingness by the mainstream media and their offspring and independent media to kind of conflate your what I would consider very valid critiques of capitalism's entrenchment on the healthcare system. You've described a sick care system, which I think is a great way of talking about it. We're not interested in keeping people healthy because the profit motive isn't there.
Is this promotion or like this is pathetic? Like they're promoting her. Like this is not. Is there a question here at all? Or are you just gonna do? Are you gonna? You like Marianne? Hey, I heard you're amazing. I heard you're one of the best thinkers. I heard you're the most humble person ever. Give me your thoughts on that. That's essentially what he's doing. I heard you're such an amazing leader, Marianne. I heard that you got the best chance ever to be president. You got such amazing ideas, Marianne. Do you want to expound on that? Do you want to expound on how amazing you are? That's the height of journalism you can get at the Vanguard. You got a presidential candidate on. Ask her about Ukraine. The vaccine stuff is alarming, but her supporting arming Nazis in Ukraine is not. The entire world is calling this shit out. Lula is calling this out. A question you can ask Marianne Williamson if you're actually serious is why do you disagree with Lula's position on Ukraine? Very simple. I wish I had time if she didn't bail. If you had what Lula advocates for that China peace plan. Marianne Williamson, do you agree or disagree? If you answer that question, watch how fast you will implode.
You think she would come on here again? You think she would come on here again?
I said beforehand, I wasn't even looking forward to the interview. If she wants to, that's fine, but she's definitely not.
Yeah,
she's definitely not.
She would, because she mentions later on in here. She mentions how she wants to go on independent media more. That's what she said. So let's listen some more though.
I just wanted to give you the opportunity to illustrate some of your concerns in regards to that, while also being somebody who I know has consistently advocated for healthcare treatment for everyone.
Well, yes, absolutely, Medicare for all. And I have talked myself about the undue influence of pharmaceutical companies. You have $88 billion medical debt in this country, while at the same time, last year alone, if you put together all 5 of the top pharmaceutical companies, there was an $80 billion profit. I talked last time, and man, was I slapped down, and all I said was I had a problem on a civil liberties level about mandates, and I had a problem with the naivete by which people aren't recognizing that too many times there's predatory behavior on the part of pharmaceutical companies. We know that it happened with opioids. And
just real quick, she said she was against mandates. That's what got Jimmy Dore, and that's what got me called an anti-vaxxer. Being against mandates, right? Let's continue. Very interesting double standards.
Yeah. What I want to point out, because it feels like the question is a question to say because people kind of call her an anti-vaxxer wrongly. He's basically saying, can you clarify how you're not an anti-vaxxer and how you're not like this crazy guy RFK? That's to me how this question is meant to be answered, or how it was set up to her.
I don't think it should be considered fringe to suggest that Americans are over-medicated. I know when I lived in Los Angeles, and I know some of the same people that Bobby Kennedy knows living in LA. I heard women who were PhDs in biochemistry who simply had some questions about childhood vaccines, who wanted to know why do we bundle them differently than in Europe? Why do they take them more frequently than in Europe? And any conversation about safety of vaccines was just people would be smeared. And I experienced that myself last time.
Isn't what she's talking about is vaccine skepticism?
That's the same thing that happened to people asking questions about the COVID vaccine.
Right.
The same exact fucking thing. I said I made a tweet that was very similar to what she said. I covered this during my coverage of RFK Crystal Ball interview, where Marianne Williamson said that there needs to be some sort of reimbursement investigation to vaccine injuries. I tweeted the same thing. That's something I agree with. Like, if Big Pharma is making $1,000 per second during the COVID vaccine, as a Marxist, I think we should seize that. So if we got people that being sick, why the fuck should they make profits? To me, that's a very basic point to make. I remember I tweeted that out, and there was a bunch of progressive bootlicking motherfuckers upset at me because that was promoting vaccine hesitancy by speaking up on people that was injured by the vaccine. But that was the same thing that Marianne Williamson used to say. So why is it bad when we say it, but why is it not bad when Marianne Williamson says it? These are the different standards that I don't understand. That was the point that I kept making. And then they turn around and smear RFK the same way that Marianne Williamson was smeared. Like, you don't see you guys are doing the same thing that Marianne Williamson is complaining about?
That is a great point, and this is what they're reason why they're bringing up the vaccine part 2 is because she is getting some blowback from the cowbell liberal, from the the blue voting. Yeah, she's getting blowback from the people who are just so entrenched in the propaganda, the FDA and CDC propaganda, that any sort of, unless you take in every booster, you're an anti. So those people, she's getting backlash. She's trying to appeal to the liberal Democrats to bring her numbers up. So now she's trying to say, look, I'm not crazy. I'm for vaccines. I'm just saying, come on, we got questions. That's all. She's trying to appeal to those voters who the cowbell left or cowbell liberals, as Didi or Do Dissonance calls them. So let's listen a little more. The second part I want you to hear, or the second clip, is they critique Bernie Sanders and she refuses to. So he brings up, he says, hey, one of the most disappointing things that happened, Bernie Sanders go ahead and endorses like this, like on the same day that he announces pretty much, and it critiques him. She's like, no, guys, no, Bernie Sanders has done too much. The same sort of answer she got. So that's the second part, and we'll end on that I want to get to here.
Including any conversation about antidepressants. So Americans are not trusting institutions that we should trust, and in many cases for good reason. So no one should just be slapped down. And so I think what's happened now is that even when people have legitimate questions, they're so slapped down, like, no, you cannot ask those questions, that it has created a broad scale distrust of anything.
Oh, just real quick. The funny thing is she's about to do the
go ahead.
thing. She's like, it's funny how you talk about vaccines or you have any question about health, you get slapped down. And then we asked her about Bernie. The Vanguard asked her about Bernie. And she's like, oh, no, you can't ask me about Bernie. No, come on, don't talk about Bernie. She's guilty of the same thing. But sorry, let's continue.
Absolutely. Now let's get a little bit to the next part here. Here we go.
And I think that honestly has been a big part of what has led to the fervor surrounding a massive distrust of our big pharmaceutical industry, and kind of the reason you kind of laid out there. If you tell people they can't ask questions about something, that they're going to wonder why, right? So I think creating fertile ground for discussions while also rooting it in the best interest of the practice of medicine as opposed to the
100%.
financial interest.
And trusting people that you can tell them the truth and have a real conversation. And 100%.
Absolutely. Well, we just talked a little bit about Bernie Sanders a couple of minutes ago, and one of the big heartbreaking disappointments for me recently was when Senator Bernie Sanders endorsed Joe Biden for re-election, basically on the day that he announced his campaign for re-election. I was really hoping, and I know a lot of other people that support you were really hoping that Biden would see your progressive campaign as kind of an extension or a continuation of the quote unquote political revolution that he started. But instead, it seems like not only him, but other elected progressives as well decided to just endorse the status quo.
No one thought
Yeah,
that.
'cause
except
we told
morons
everybody,
like
Nick.
yourself. Like
We told everybody.
You notice that, CJ? You see how he's trying to feel? He's trying. Don't throw everyone else under the bus. Only you and the people at Crystal Ball's wedding was dumb enough to say that Marianne Williamson was going to have a Bernie-style campaign. No one else thought that except morons like you and people who try to manufacture consent for that. All right, let's continue. I gotta make sure that's clear.
Quote candidate rather than allowing said political revolution to potentially continue via your campaign. What was your reaction to that? Were you hoping to secure the endorsements of Sanders and other elected progressives, or was this something that you were kind of expecting?
Well, I wasn't going so far as to allow myself to hope for an endorsement, but I certainly hoped that he would just remain silent. Come on. He went all the way. I support Biden. He went all the way to.
What does that mean? What does that say? He went over and above, to your point, Marianne. He didn't just simply say, I'm with him. He went over and above and did it on the same day that he announces, which is not, we didn't say he would do it that quick, but we said, we had streams out, Nick, that said, hey, what's going to happen when Bernie Sanders and AOC endorses Joe Biden, which they all did. You don't have the establishment elected progressives on your side. You don't have Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders couldn't win with the coalescing of all these people coming together. But somehow you're different, Marianne.
Yeah, she got the sauce.
She got it.
So far as to say, I discourage any other high visibility candidate progressive from running. I was very disappointed in that. But it is what it is.
What?
You know, it's one of many things that just, when you're running, this knocks you down and that knocks you down and you just.
Yeah. What do you, I mean, I guess perhaps it's not my place to ask you or your place that you feel to speculate, but what do you think it is about running in the elections the way he did, clearly identifying so many issues that I think all three of us would, I have to give him credit for popularizing and normalizing in this country. Medicare for all, free college. These were all ideas that were, I mean, Gavin and I would have never considered them when we were seniors in high school, and he kind of burst onto the scene. It radicalized us. I mean, we were like, oh, why are the Democrats
just letting you guys know
right about everything and Republicans are just wrong about everything? And no, he completely reawakened so many people's thoughts of what was possible. And then to see him do that, work to expand the minds of an entire generation of people like me and Gavin, and only to try and shrink it back into the box again as soon as somebody like Joe Biden is coming on. And I think that contributes to a real problem for progressives, period, because now anytime that Gavin and I are like, hey guys, it's time to try again. It's time to pick up the mantle and keep fighting. People are like, we already tried that. It didn't work. It's like, well, we tried it and we got to try it another way. Like, I'm just wondering if you.
What's the definition of insanity, Zach? What's the definition of insanity? Gotta keep trying shit, don't work. Trying shit, don't work. Trying shit, don't work. Waste 100 mil over here, don't matter. 100 million over there, don't matter. 200 million this election, don't matter. Zach like, let's just keep trying shit. Let's just keep throwing money in the drain. Let's keep throwing money into elections. Fuck it, another hit, $100 million? Mutual aid, who gives a fuck? Let's just throw it to another election. Just trying shit, don't work. That's really your political ideology, Zach. Unserious. And Marianne Williamson, I can't wait to see what she says. Go ahead, CJ. I'll shut up.
No, I was just gonna say it's about to get crazy when you hear some other things she say here.
How you plan to respond to that, given the fact that I imagine it's something you've come across, this rapid defeatism and just apathy, honestly, because people feel like there's nothing that can be done.
People who are the real defeatists, and I gotta say this. The people who are the real defeatists are the people who keep trying to fail the same shit that keep failing because they see no other alternative is working. You guys are such nihilists. You guys are like, what's the point of doing mutual aid? What's the point of a third party? What's the point of us actually organizing ourselves? We're not going to work, so we got to vote for another Democrat. I know the Democrats are evil, but we got no power. You guys are the biggest defeatists. You guys had the most apathy. We have revolutionary optimism because we're doing tour for the poor. I am starting a Kansas City mutual aid organization. What are you guys doing? You guys not doing anything because you're giving up. So you're like, I'm gonna wait till a millionaire white woman comes up. Marianne Williamson, yeah, we found a millionaire white woman. She's gonna save us. I don't want to do any work. I don't want to do any work at all. Thank God Marianne Williamson came up. Now I don't have to do anything but have her on my show. They don't want to do any work because they are defeatists. They are the nihilists in the situation, not us. And it's absurd that they try to twist it around. We have revolutionary optimism. That's why we tell you get in the streets. We have revolutionary optimism. That's why we're doing Tour for the Poor. We're doing our own organizations. CJ has his own organization. He just promoted earlier in the stream. We are doing shit because we believe that shit will work. Meanwhile, Vanguard and them like, what's the point of third parties? What's the point of doing all this shit? It's not going to work. They're the nihilists, guys. Do not allow them to twist it up.
Defeatism. So yeah, this is the part I think is interesting that I knew would kind of trigger you. So that's why I wanted you to hear it. But
defeatism and just apathy, honestly, because people feel like there's nothing that can be done.
Well, there are a couple of things there. First of all, about Senator Sanders, I assume, I don't know, but I assume that what Bernie is thinking is we came really close to something wonderful with Build Back Better. It was only 2 Democratic senators that held us back. Maybe he's thinking, I assume what he's thinking is we've got to get Biden back in there, plus 2 more Democratic senators, and then we can get it done. You know, he's an institutionalist. He's been a U.S. senator for a long time.
So this is how she's whitewashing Bernie Sanders, completely selling out the movement. She's trying to give him a reason, and you're trying to tell me this is not a cult? So you're trying to tell me that?
This is toxic positivity, and this is why civility politics is the scourge of the working class. We can't be mean to Bernie Sanders. I explained the crimes, how he sold us out, the money he stole, the grip that he operated, but we shouldn't be mad because that's uncivil. You come on, man. You bring down my vibes. Come on, man. I just got back from yoga. I just ate some brunch. You fucking ruined my vibes. Talking about how Bernie Sanders is bad and sold us out, ruining my vibes, man. This is toxic positivity. And this is how civility politics is used to mute legitimate criticism of people like Bernie. Go ahead, CJ. I got to wrap up soon anyway.
This is ending right here.
I stay to the end, but I'll shut the hell up.
Oh no, we're not gonna watch all of this. It's just this section, but it's a couple more seconds here. Let's listen.
I assume that's where he's coming from. His value and everything he's done for us is not diminished in my eyes just because I don't agree with him about this one thing.
His value is not diminished
at all. The next
thing
you talked about was a general disappointment that progressives feel right now.
The last part
I think this is another area where it behooves us to look at history. I think it's fair to assume that abolitionists had some bad days. I think it's fair to assume that the women suffragists had some desperate days.
Hold on, I spoke over one part.
Let's toughen up. You know, I'm sorry. We really had desperate days.
I know it's fair. The first person she said, listen to this part.
This one thing. The next thing you talked about was a general disappointment that progressives feel right now. I think this is another area where it behooves us to look at history. I think it's fair to assume that abolitionists had some bad days.
Abolitionists.
I think it's fair to assume that the women suffragists had some desperate days.
Comparing Bernie to them?
I know it's fair to assume that civil rights workers had some horrifying days.
What the fuck?
We really need to toughen up. You know, I'm sorry. We really, as a generation, need to stop being.
She is comparing movements.
Are you serious?
Movements to voting, Nick. And saying that in response to saying I'm done with voting and I'm moving to, you need to toughen up and get your ass back in that voting booth.
I couldn't.
And she's saying the way we need to look to history to prove you to get back in the voting booth is to look to movements?
I couldn't possibly imagine how bad that answer was going to be. I wasn't even prepared for that. The same way how when her dirty break answered, when she gave her dirty break answer, I was like, whoa, I didn't expect her answer to be that bad. Holy shit, did she just reach a new low? Holy shit, was that a bad answer? So let's break down how bad of an answer this was. I am in shambles at how bad of an answer this is. I am in shambles. I am literally shook at how horrible of an answer this is. So the Vanguard calls out Bernie for being a grifter, sellout that he is. So Marianne Williamson brings up other revolutionary struggles that is not connected to Bernie Sanders, but as to say, yeah, Bernie did good stuff before. Yeah, we had good stuff happen to us before. So who cares if we sell out now? Who cares if we sell out now because we did something in the past? This is unbelievably toxic ideology. Who does it serve? Marianne Williamson, with this answer, showed her class loyalty more than probably any other answer I ever heard from her. And I am not exaggerating. She is saying, as long as you do one good thing in the past, you're allowed to sell out. You're allowed to go on book tours because you sell out your movement. You're allowed to vote for war. You're allowed to vote for Capitol Police funding. You're allowed to endorse Jim Crow Joe. You're allowed to do everything you want as long as you do a few performative actions. Who does this serve? This served a professional managerial class. So they can say, oh, I went to a protest in college. I remember during the Iraq War, I was upset during the Iraq War. This Sam Cedar and them. This Jank Yeager.
Did you see this interview? Did you see this interview, Nick?
No, I have not. I haven't seen any of it. There's no way.
He literally goes in and does that exact thing. And we're not going to watch it.
Yeah,
she does.
I believe you.
She does that exact thing, Nick, where she starts. When I was young, my daddy was a part. She literally says this. My daddy was a part of a union. That wasn't you. When I was over here, my cousin was a part of this. She literally does what you just said, and you haven't even seen this interview, Nick.
That's why I couldn't. There's no way I was about to do our breakdown. I didn't see none of this shit. There's no way I could stomach through this shit. But this is what Marianne Williamson is advocating for is the professional managerial class dream, CJ. So all you have to do is do a few good things. So you just sacrifice a few years being radical. Then after that, you can do wherever the fuck you want. And if you question that person, how dare you? Remember what he did in the civil rights era? That's what they do with John Lewis all the time. John Lewis destroyed Libya. John Lewis sold out the black community. But people was like, he did that one thing for the civil rights movement, so that doesn't matter. Who does that serve? That does not serve us. That's the professional managerial dream culture that, of course, Marianne Williamson endorses. You need to be a revolutionary fighter. You need to do good stuff and continue to do good stuff. Your legacy will be defined on whether you sell out or not. Fidel Castro didn't sell his people out. That's why he's still beloved by revolutionaries to this day. Malcolm X didn't sell his people out. That's why he's beloved by revolutionaries to this day. Nelson Mandela didn't sell his people out. That's why he's beloved by revolutionaries to this day. You are not allowed to do one thing in your life and then sell out and be like, come on, man. Look at my resume and list of accomplishments. Fuck you. This shit is for life, son. And if you don't go through it for life, you put yourself eligible to be picked apart by younger revolutionaries like us when we critically analyze what happened, what went wrong. And that will happen with Bernie. Marianne Williamson doesn't want that to happen because she knows it will reflect bad on her as well. That's why I'm glad you did a segment breakdown because I wasn't about to watch it because, dude, I could not possibly imagine going through that entire interview.
I didn't let her play the whole answer because you literally, it would infuriate you because she doubles down on the. Yeah, I'm telling you to watch it later, but she doubles down on this idea that, what do you mean? The women's suffrage, Martin Luther King, they just got back up and got back in the game. Are we talking about a movement? Or are we talking about voting for your ass? I'm actually going to let her finish her answer. I do want to play this because it's important that everybody here in the audience hears. This is not a good answer to this question. So I'll back it up just a little bit for context.
Civil rights workers had some horrifying days.
So the basic question, if you didn't catch it, is that for those that because we had a few people just join, basic question is she's asked, how do you get people who are basically done with this process of voting again for another because they keep getting disappointed in the process, Bernie Sanders, Nia Turner, like how do you keep getting people to come back out to vote? It's hard. And that's the question she's presented with. And let's get her full answer.
He's been a U.S. Senator for a long time. I assume that's where he's coming from. His value and everything he's done for us is not diminished in my eyes just because I don't agree with him about this one thing. The next thing you talked about was the general disappointment that progressives feel right now. I think this is another area where it behooves us to look at history. I think it's fair to assume that abolitionists had some bad days. I think it's fair to assume that the women's suffragists had some desperate days. I know it's fair to assume that civil rights workers had some horrifying days. We really need to toughen up. You know, I'm sorry. We really, as a generation, need to stop being so precious. Social change does not come like this. It never has. We're fighting huge forces. And
social change doesn't come like that, and social change doesn't come at the ballot box. So what the progressive Democratic narrative have done is they've co-opted revolutionary ideology, language, and like sort of essence, and use it to cloak the same run-of-the-mill Democratic politics. Because she's using this revolution as if Bernie Sanders didn't have a revolution. Bernie Sanders had a campaign. Revolutions don't end because Barack Obama comes in and puts your arm around you. Revolutions don't end over that. But that's exactly what happened. Because it was a campaign. It wasn't a revolution. But they're using revolutionary language to talk about voting as if that's revolutionary. It's the co-opting of revolution and making these milquetoast sort of alliances, these milquetoast sort of strategies, and selling it's revolutionary to go vote. What? And now trying to somehow conflate picking yourself back up from a movement like women's suffrage and picking yourselves back up from a corrupt people that are taking money from working families and not delivering on promises. That's not the same. That's not the same thing. So don't get confused with this answer as if this is a good answer. This is a actual pretty terrible answer, and it points out how disrespectful you believe or how low intellect you believe the listener is.
I know I went through something not a few months ago where I was going through some disappointment about something that happened with my running. And I texted a friend, and I don't know what I was whining about. And he texted me back, and it just woke me up. He said, "Toughen up, Buttercup."
He said, "Toughen up, Buttercup. You got millions in the bank." This is so silly. This is so silly. It's almost ridiculous. But so let's listen to a few more seconds. I'm trying to get to her end of her answer just to give her the opportunity to finish her answer here. But it's hard in one dose.
And that's how I feel about all of us. If I hear one more person say they're just so traumatized by all of it, do you think what it would have been like to walk across that bridge at Selma? Do you think they weren't traumatized? What would have been?
It's pretty disgusting to compare or to equate people fighting for freedom and getting up and coming back to the fight against freedom and liberation to people getting up and coming back to vote for a Democratic candidate that's not going to do anything. But this is what the professional managerial class does, co-opting revolutionary ideas and histories and stories and pretending it applies to them.
Been like to be one of those women suffragists who, when they were thrown in jail, why were they thrown in jail? Because they marched for women's suffrage. They marched for women's right to vote, and for that, they're thrown in prison, right? And the conditions in the prison were so horrible that they went on a hunger strike. At that point, the response of the prison officials was to send men into their prison cells and force onto their necks these metal contraptions in order to force feed them. You think they would have been a bit traumatized and anxious?
That's fucking disgusting. You're fucking disgusting. For you to pretend that at all, and the suffering that went on in the time period that you're talking about at all is relatable to people coming out and voting for you and a Democratic candidate. that's the height of disgust. It's of height of being disgusting, and it's absolutely showing your class. It's absolutely showing your class. And then we have the two guys who is not in this high class. I would think they're working class. These two guys are just smirking along with this nonsense that she's trying to co-opt.